nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming today, this evening. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to add an item to items for discussion and approval. I'd like to add a signage discussion.
So under section 7 or under section 9?
9.
Section
Is it 9?
8.
No,
It's
section
old
8.
business.
Old business, right.
Old
Okay.
business.
Yep.
So letter C or something?
Yeah, letter C. Correct, Michael. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda with the additional?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Resolution for closing the meeting for negotiation strategy.
Motion to introduce the resolution for closed meeting for negotiations.
Second?
Second, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. This time is for public comment. Okay. Thank you. Consent items. We have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion Amy, second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, discussion items. Josh? So, audit. We have somebody from our audit department here. Craig,
That would be me.
that would be you.
That would be
You're
me.
on.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll be pretty brief. I'm Craig Copenhagen. I'm your principal. This is my second visit with your board. So there's a couple of handouts in front of you. If you want to follow along, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll just kind of give you the highlights and run through a few charts and graphs. I'm going to talk mainly on it says executive audit summary in the little window. So if you see that, that's what I'll check on mainly tonight. Page 1 is just kind of a one-page synopsis of the audit results. So we issued a clean opinion on the financial statements, so no exceptions with the financials. That's always a good thing. And then the rest of what you see on page 1 starts out with no, and in this case, no is a good thing. Internal controls over financial reporting, we had no findings there. Minnesota legal compliance over the district, we had no findings, and then also no findings for compliance on the student activity funds. No past adjustments, no adjusting entries of any nature. So the fund balances that, if you're looking at preliminary results, the fund balances there should match up with the fund balances you see in the financial statements tonight. Let's see. There we go. Push you right there. This is fun. Okay, so kind of overall results. This is just looking at the general fund. So it's a few pages in, so flip past the letters. And you'll see kind of
Page 11.
11. Yep. Okay. So general fund, this is where we focus, a lot of our attention. It's the main operating fund of the district. For 2017 school year, closed out the year at 20.7, almost $20.8 million in revenue, about $20.6 million in expenses, added $189,000 to fund balance in the general fund. A couple things going on here. In general, the enrollment for the online programs was down a little bit, so we'll see that in a few slides. The decrease in enrollment was mitigated by a couple things. One, just the general education formula rate increased about $117 a student over the previous year. And then this guy right here, long-term facilities maintenance, had about $365,000 of revenues for 2017. That's the new category now that previously was deferred maintenance and health and safety. So a couple things happened. Deferred maintenance, the ending balance there is 0. That's because it transfers over to long-term facilities. Health and safety is basically there's no, had no revenues coming in, minimal expenses. I think that was a kind of a net transfer out, and ended the year at negative $46,690. So basically the expenditures that used to be here and here are going to be coming through on long-term facilities going forward, and that's where your revenues are going to be. The health and safety, this negative, this is going to ride for about another 18 months. Basically the way health and safety had worked in the past is you had to do the project, submit the expenditures to be reimbursed through levy, and be blessed the expenditures, and you got reimbursed after the fact, up to 2 years. So you had a pretty good catch-up tax settlement coming in on health and safety in the 15-16 year. The 16-17 year, nothing. Looking out at next year's levy certification, there's minimal. So it's very possible, depending on what happens in 18-19, it's very possible that this deficit is just going to hold. We'll have to see what the levy certification looks like for next fall when we get to that point. And if it does, basically that shortfall will be covered by unassigned. So that's just something to kind of just keep in mind, you know, going forward. Your unassigned fund balance is in good shape, you know, financially. You've got the fund balance to cover it if it ends up being a shortfall. What we'd prefer to see is, you know, another settlement, property tax levy settlement come through for $46,000 to net us out to 0, and might be good. That's probably the main thing on this slide. Next few, we'll just kind of click through. We'll show you a few trends here. This is basically your unrestricted fund balance. So general fund, any fund balance not specifically restricted to classroom use specifically. So your policy is to maintain a minimum 5% of annual expenditures here. You're at 9.4. This is measured based on including online. Restricted fund balance, excluding capital related, this one closed out the year at $409,000. For the most part, you're using this funding as it comes in, so you're adding, you know, a minimal amount to fund balance this year. But what's in here mainly, I think the increase was you didn't spend as much of your staff development as you could have. So there's staff development here, medical assistance, that's a new category that slid in here this year too. Gifted and talented basic skills, and alternative learning center. The operating capital fund balance, this one's been holding pretty steady. Again, you're using basically the revenues that come in the fiscal year, you're putting to use in the fiscal year. So your fund balance is holding pretty stable. Health and safety, we talked about that one. This is a trend, 15-16, you got that a catch up here that brought you less negative. In 16, again, holding pretty steady to that number in 17. Deferred maintenance, this one went to 0 and transferred over here to long-term facilities, which is new for the first time in the 16-17 year. Food service, this is your second year with Taher. added about $8,000 to fund balance in the food service fund. You did get a 6-cent per meal kind of assistance for the Healthy Foods Initiative. That helped. You also, this increase is also after buying a new range. So main thing with food service, basically that fund balance has to be used in food service, specifically in the kitchen.
The range was a grant,
Oh, okay.
so that's why
So it's kind of an in and out.
right.
So the fund balance there then is basically your 6 cents, and then kind of cost control and good participation, or at least better participation than you've had years prior. So it's kind of a nice recovery from back here when it was, you know, 0 and you were kind of having to transfer in to cover it. So community service fund balance. This one, we got some early child funding from the state that kind of added to fund balance for 17. School readiness has been pretty strong the last few years here, and especially in 17, so that's good to see as well. Capital projects fund, this is your fund 6, so this is a big bond project, and it's just showing basically you issued the debt, the bonds in 16, you did the project through 16 and 17, and about 108,000 of fund balance was remaining at June 30th. Your debt service fund balance, few things. Here you hadn't issued debt for a while, up until 16. So basically as your debt service requirements decreased, likewise your levy into the debt service fund decreased as well. And then if you get too much of a fund balance in the debt service fund, the state will kind of start putting the shackles on, ratcheting that down a little further. You have your first debt service payments in 17 on your 2016 bonds. Your principal payments started. So that was a little bit more than what you had for debt service levy, tax levy specifically. And looking out at next year's levy certification, you've got about an additional 76,000 roughly of debt service levy coming in the school year that we're in, which will, should bring this back to probably about in that 15,000-ish range by the end of this year, the year that we're in. So, I suppose I should talk about, be specific as to what year we expect it to show up, because you're probably looking at 3 years worth of stuff. So this one, the year we're in, and probably next year's too, right, for the budget. So okay. General fund revenues, this is going to include online. As with most districts, all districts, your major source is state sources for funding, not property taxes. This one with the online schools, those students bring additional state aid dollars, but since they're outside of your district, they don't bring property tax revenue dollars. So your percentage of state sources is higher than what you would see with districts that don't have the online program. So now we're gonna jump around a little bit. We've kind of put a different twist on starting here now on some of the following charts and graphs. So I know, I remember from last year's board meeting and also the proposal, we wanted to see maybe some more charts and graphs that are more brick and mortar K-12 program related. So we have a little blend of both going on. So this is the student count including online. So a little bit of a, kind of a slow decrease here in the student count. This is mainly coming from online. this is your student count in the brick and mortar, the K-12, the local K-12. So this is holding pretty steady over the years.
And we've got enrollment projections for, later on in the meeting today, so we'll talk about that too.
So then, vocational, here's kind of what's going on. So some of these, we're gonna try these out with you kind of this time through, and if you like them, we'll continue and build on them. So, for example, especially like with the online, we've got 5 years worth of data here because on those charts, because the Department of Education, when they roll up your numbers to the state level, they're looking at your general fund in total, including all of your online. Now, when we get down to looking at some of these specifically for local, we don't have historical stats at the local level published by the Department of Education. So to get to these are your numbers, is your number. We have to crunch the numbers in order to get to this. So it takes a little bit of extra work.
That slide's not in the book, is it?
It's in different, yeah, I think our
It's a
book is
few
in
ahead.
different
Oh, okay.
order.
Page
So,
19.
yeah, so it jumps around a little bit. I don't know what happened with that, but what this next series is looking at is basically cost on a per student basis. So we're going to take expenditures off of your financial statements for the local in this case. So we're careful to label these if we're looking at local, or if we're going to include online in these calculations. So this is vocational. The far column is Houston on a per student basis. So we're just dividing by that 430 students basically to get to this. This is, it doesn't show up here, but this, the middle column is going to be statewide 2016 stats for districts of 0 to 500 students. So districts your size. And then the far right is all districts in the state. So that's going to be a statewide composite. So it just kind of shows you kind of how you compare. So you've got business education and industrial tech, whereas other districts don't have, usually they're dropping the industrial tech often if they're kind of cutting down on vocational. And then the statewide is basically you're dividing the cost over just a larger body of students. So that's kind of the difference. So if we build this out going forward, you'll be able to kind of see with these columns, we'll keep adding, and you can kind of then we'll build out a trend for you.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. So it gives you just a different look. Special education, these slides are all in there, but I know in the book they're not going in the same order. So special education, this includes online because you have a pretty significant component of special education coming through there as well. And in this case, now these are going to be, we have all the 5 years of trend information, including online. The bar here then is going to be, it's a different stat from the state 2016. It's going to be student populations of 1,000 to 2,000. So we're matching this benchmark up with your student population. And then this is all districts in the state. So your special education, you're running through HVED, and it's been financially, it looks like a pretty good relationship.
In the slide, if we did a slide that was just Houston on-site and not the online, all the HVED costs were in there. So it really was skewed and not accurate because a lot of those HVED costs are spread out over MNVA because MNVA uses a lot of the HVED resources too.
So on this here, the 2179 for the state average.
Yep.
That's cost per pupil unit, or?
That's what they're.
Basically.
Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying, right? I just wanna get that clarity, so for us, our cost per pupil unit is about 1438.
1,400, yep.
So we're managing it pretty well then.
Right.
That's the way we're doing it. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Instructional support this is a lot of technology related cost here. So this is including online as well. And it's, you compare pretty favorably here. Again, we're looking at districts of 1,000 to 2,000 students. It's pretty significant to the online especially.
How do we break out instructional technology support for online? Isn't that just part of the program? I mean, how do we?
It's with the UFARs,
Okay.
and all the computer purchases are, it's got the UFAR coding,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, so each of these slides, what we build these off of is quote unquote program code. So there's a
Okay.
different program code for
Okay.
each one of these slides, and it specifies.
So it's providing the tool to the students, not necessarily the support of technology. That's
Right.
what I was.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
yep.
Pupil support is, this is gonna be like counselors, school nurse, psych services, social services. This is local again. So benchmarking based on 0 to 500 students, and you're a little bit higher, but the student number that we're dividing by is 430, so it's about probably 80% of what the top end range is for the student count. Less than the statewide average, so kind of in between. Sites, buildings, and equipment. This is basically your maintenance, custodial, utilities. So this is your brick and mortar buildings again. So this is local. Lines up very well with the benchmarks. So it gives you an idea, where you shake out, and hopefully, like with the lighting, the windows, kind of the envelope, the work you've done with that, hopefully you get some savings in some of those utility dollars going forward. So.
This one before was very skewed because the cost of running this building was very high.
Again, food service, this is local only. We're not sending lunch out to the online kids. So again, your food service costs right in line with kind of what we expect to see, and in between the statewide benchmarks there. Transportation, this is local only, so we're not transporting the online kids. Doing very well with your transportation costs. Kind of some of the difference usually on this slide is because your benchmarks are going to include a blend of districts that contract out all their bus service. So usually when if you contract out the bus service, usually this stat would be higher than the benchmarks. So it's got a blend of, the benchmarks have a blend of both. Own your fleet and contract out. So.
And from what you've seen, owning your own fleet is much more economical than contracted?
Typically it is. It's kind of a trade-off, because if you contract out, you're paying the bus company for their salary, their maintenance, providing them a profit margin. If you own your fleet, typically the trade-off is this one, your sites and buildings, typically is a little bit higher the other way, because you're doing all those repairs are running through here. So that's a little bit of the trade-off. But this is, you're doing very well on your routes, and route management is what that tells me. So.
This is very useful. I don't think we've ever seen a slide. I'm used to seeing it with the online, so this is very useful to be able to see this one, because we kind of wondered
really helpful.
if our costs were in line, so it's great to see that.
Yeah, I
That's where we
think
are.
this slide, like, if we included online, you know, the
Yeah.
cost would be down here. That's
Yeah,
where that
it just
is.
didn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, right? Let's see, whoops, went the wrong way. Having fun with the clicker. Community service, yeah, I don't have much to add here. This is local only again, so you're right in the zone with districts of similar size. Capital expenditures, this capital expenditures is just general fund, so this doesn't include the building project. So this is just gonna be equipment and technology that you purchase through the general fund is what's makes up that $497. And this one, the benchmarks are here. I wouldn't pay a whole lot of attention to them because capital expenditures is very specific to your district. So what you'd be more interested in, I think the value is what this looks like, the next year, the next year, the next year. So you can kind of look back at the years and you'll know, oh, we bought a bus or we bought, we bought something. So that's kind of how that will be, I think, more useful. District and school administration and support services. This one we included kind of all in one, online, because like the superintendent's office, the business office are doing support work, for the online as well as the local. You've got other kind of, management type things going on. Your district-wide, kind of, if you just isolate your district-wide numbers, there's more kind of management type related that kind of transcends over both the local and the online schools. So, but with the online students, you're spreading these costs over, a significant number of students, and doing well, comparing to the statewide average, that probably has all of those 1,000 to 2,000 students under roof, whereas you don't.
So I was trying to find the page, I don't know if you said this,
Yeah,
but
It's page
what's in
18.
support services, so what does this include?
Oh.
I'm kind of surprised to see our costs go
Yeah.
up, because I thought, I'm just wondering what has made the cost
You mean
kind of trend up?
Go up from 607 to 622.
Yeah, 572 to 607 to 622. I just didn't know what was in there because,
Well, your support services, a lot of that is business office.
Because we brought in
was it the part-time?
Kelly, and right?
Yeah, we
Because we got
added
Marcia's
Kelly.
part-time and we added Kelly, so you have that, overlap of the two working until Marcia retires. I'm assuming, possible, right?
well,
Yeah, because administration, I know went down.
Yeah.
That line
The
item,
school administration went down.
Yeah, but
Right,
this
the
one it
school.
went up. Yeah.
your
No, just
I mean,
the
but it didn't go by
administration
much.
part of it went down.
yeah, just the administration part of it. This also has the business office, So like Gwen is part of this too, so.
So I'm assuming that's probably what happened, because we brought on a part-timer and we still have Marcia, so you kind of.
Yeah, cause your
Doubled
total
it a
costs
little
for
bit.
that line item were about 38,000 more in total
That'd be about right?
for your.
Looks like we maybe do
support
something like that
services.
every year for the last 3 to 4 years, because it keeps going up and up and up and up.
And once Marcia probably retires, it'll probably go down,
Well,
unless
and-
something
and-
else changes. But we're still doing well for
Yeah.
what we got going on,
yeah,
so that's the main
Well,
reason.
everything else in there too, a lot of that includes, insurance
Mhm.
and, so our liability and, stuff like that. And then a lot of it is just all of the business costs, and so you've got inflation on top of that,
Mhm.
so. I mean, it's not going up by much.
No.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of a slow trend line. Okay, regular instruction, this is the kind of the largest line item in your budget, so this is most of your classroom learning here. This includes online, so like your you've got some extra kind of consultant costs for like the online kids running through here, so that's kind of the difference. This probably has little to virtually no online. And then if we look at it for local only, this is still regular instruction. So it's the same line item on the financials as this slide, but just looking at local only. So kind of here, you're dividing that cost over a fairly smaller number of students, you know, relative to the benchmark. You're 430 compared to top end is 599. And then, you know, if you've got some extra programs going on that maybe these don't,
You're also comparing 2016 to 2017, yeah. And so there's that inflationary cost, and the 0 to 499, that 5,769 is the average of the 0 to 499. So we would.
And like you said, if we provide more instruction, then some of the average schools don't have some of the classes that we provide. So there's cost is going to be lower. Because a lot of schools have taken stuff away from instruction, correct?
Exactly.
Overall.
Usually the arts
are usually
like
ones
first
that,
to go.
Yeah.
Does it make sense though that our cost of instruction, if we include the online, is higher than our cost of instruction?
Oh, the online cost of instruction with the cost of the curriculum?
Okay, so it's got the curriculum cost in addition to the teachers. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say, if it's teachers, I would expect it to go down.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the cost of the,
Overall package.
it's the cost of the curriculum.
Got it.
Yeah, it's fully loaded.
Well, it's nice to see that we're not getting rid of programs. You know,
Yeah, usually.
we're still maintaining our school.
Right.
Which to me, it looks so far we've done well for what we have.
Right. And I would say like even with this, you know, you still added 189,000 to your bottom line in the general fund, and you know, that's a modest add, you know, to the fund balance. So.
The previous slide, the regular instruction that included online, you said that the state or the school districts 1,000 to 1999 is mostly all local students. Do you find that trend is changing, that more districts are offering some in-house or access to online programming? Because I felt like I came in contact with that at the MSBA convention.
Yeah, I mean, I know I can speak for like my home district, which is Southland. I mean, they're trading back and forth with, but it's not necessarily online curriculum. They're just doing ITB. Like
that's different. That's more local.
It's a little bit different.
But there's a lot more schools that are doing online in-house as far as online for their own kids, and then they don't have to get approval for an online school from MDE as long as they're just providing it to their own students.
So I'm just,
but they have to be in-house, brick and mortar. They can't.
They have the students have to be
part of their district.
They have to be part of their district.
Right.
But all I'm saying is that we have online students compared to local students, and other districts have local students compared to their online district. But that blend is going to be changing, I think, as
I think
time goes on.
Will.
So
especially especially more the more rural districts, is, you know, and the licensing that goes with the teaching to teach the curriculum gets to be pretty specific.
There's not too much fluctuation between 2015, 16, and 17 for our instructional costs. I mean, we're down to 6905 and 6907 and 527. So I mean,
the one kind of advantage that you have with the online is that when the enrollment, if the online enrollment decreases, you have less revenue, but then you also have less curriculum subscription, so the cost goes down too. So that's kind of why you have a pretty level cost per student there. It's one of the reasons. Because the revenue went down, but the cost went down as well. Debt service. This is another one now, when I was talking about capital expenditures, this is kind of another one that, the benchmarks are here, but, it's gonna be very district specific. So the benchmarks are there. I think over time, along with like capital expenditures, you look at your own trends here. So this debt service is your specifically debt service fund. So again, here your principal payments just started on your 2016 bonds. That's what's different. And building construction, same thing. This is going to be your building project. So this is the debt that started here was expenditure here. So again, very specific to your own capital expenditure plan that you build specifically for your district. So that's what I've done.
Do you have any questions for?
Should we be doing anything different?
How common is it to have an audit with 0 findings?
Very much uncommon. So usually there's at least financial reporting, right? So kudos to Gwen for being.
Good job, Gwen!
So my question, the one where we almost always get dinged is on those student activity funds. So my question is, what are you doing different that we got a clean audit on the student activity funds for the first time in my memory?
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a big thing. It's something that you've always said is pretty common.
It's common.
But
it's kind of what, if you get after in 1 year, usually it gets clean. It's usually pretty clean for 2 years, and then you have different change in personnel, and then you kind of swing back the other way a little bit. So
have you done anything different, or you're just?
Marcia's job changed. I've seen we just looked at the findings that we had and tried to fix them.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it was a little thing, but it's a big thing when you can come away with a clean audit. It's that one other thing.
Having that one extra body, having Kelly and Marcia helped to divide some things. So.
Was that the separation of duties thing?
Separation of duties.
Okay.
That's always been a problem for us with the number of bodies.
It's always a problem for schools.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. Yep. Thanks for all your work.
I'll relinquish my sword.
No, I didn't play with it.
You're not gonna hang out?
Well, I was at my own board meeting last night.
We're going back to rebel country, huh?
We'll go back to the warm, balmy south.
Yeah. Right.
I taught at Southland for 12 years.
Yeah.
So I know that district.
So are you actually in Adams or Keister or?
I am in Dexter.
Okay.
So out in God's country.
Windmill.
The windmill.
Yeah, the
windmill.
country. That's right. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Have a
much,
good trip.
and thank the rest of your team too.
Yeah,
Will do.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Gwen. See ya.
Okay. Moving on, enrollment projections.
Okay.
Sorry, she was distracting me.
Is that the graph? There. This is what you'll see that in 16-17, that's a 430 that, or the 4 that we had before that was listed in the audit. And you'll notice that in 17-18, this year, we are up to 452. So we had a jump in enrollment this year, and that's also why the projection model wants to keep jumping that up, because, oh, you jumped, and so they think that that's starting a trend, and I would like to be cautious. So our local enrollment did go up, but I kind of, not that I want the line to go down, but I think we need to be cautious and kind of think that we might be a little flatter now. But
the bottom line on there takes 7-year average. So that's probably the one you want to look at more.
so that gives us a little bit of a dip.
And this comes from the software that you use to project enrollments?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But it's nice to see that jump this year.
And this is our local.
Yep, this is just local.
And what year does the big class graduate?
The fifth grade will graduate in 7 years, so that puts them at 2025.
So right off of this.
Yep.
So we'll see a drop.
Yeah, and unless we have another baby boom, and I think the only way we got the baby boom for that class was the flood. So
Positive thinking.
Well, Ryan.
Snowstorm.
There's
Yeah.
a lot in that
Really?
age, but I don't remember on the census what it was.
Yeah.
Is there any way to see enrollment trends for online? I know not using this software, but is there any way to map it out that way? And you give us our enrollment numbers, you know, they're like snapshots this month and then that month and that month, and
Oh, yeah, we could do the online enrollment. I could chart what we had the different years and do it the same way, but it would all be historical.
it still would give me a sense of, I don't know why, just me, I guess I'm visual that way, that it's putting the data together over time that might, like you said, you've made this cautious and you're down and up and down and up, you know, because you're being cautious, and sometimes those little things change over a number of years that you think you're flat and you're really going down and you think you're up. And
Right now, the projection for online, in talking to Greg Blau, the projection for next year has us up enrollment by about 60, and the reason for that is they're really going to start targeting more of the K through 8 students, and thinking that because they felt that their marketing probably targeted the high school kids, and in high school our numbers are up, and so they think if they do that same type of targeting K-8, then that might increase our numbers there too.
And probably a better success rate too with the younger.
Well, we need to make sure if we're
Retention is what we've got.
retention is what we need, but also we need to target kids who can find success, because it is a huge commitment from the entire family to have online students in elementary school, because a parent has to be at home. Any other?
Anything else? Okay, thanks. Just the strategic planning subcommittees.
In the November 15th board meeting, and I apologize that this wasn't on the January organizational meeting. Thank you, Mimi, for reminding. But we talked about having a subcommittee that works through each of the topics of the strategic plan instead of working it through at the board. And so is that something you still want to convene? Is that a subcommittee for which you want to have a charter written? Is that going to be an ad hoc subcommittee? Is that going to be a standing subcommittee? And so those are all discussions.
If it was a subcommittee, it would be a subcommittee of what?
Subcommittee of the board.
Well, then it would just be a committee.
No, a committee, yeah. Committee of the board.
And I
Okay.
think we already kind of decided that's what we wanted to do, right? So I think it's just a matter of who's gonna be on it and what.
I don't necessarily feel it needs to be a standing committee. It's not really a recommended standing committee, but ad hoc means you're task oriented, right?
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to sunset in 1 year. It can continue until we've answered all the questions
Right.
about.
Till we make sure we're on track, everything's good to go.
We had a topic per quarter, kind of.
That's
Something like that.
Yeah.
because I brought in one of the topics
Mhm.
at that November meeting, and that's when it was discussed, instead of bringing the topic to the board, a committee
Yeah,
worked
the whole
through
purpose
these
of it is try
topics.
to keep it rolling.
Yeah.
We ought to keep the ball
What are we
rolling.
deciding tonight then?
Just discussing
Just
it.
We're discussing, and so,
What if we attacked it in a point where let's say we're bringing this up issue by issue, if we then had people that specifically wanted to work on that topic for that?
I mean, change out the people on the committee at a regular time.
Specialize it, or if someone has a strength to utilize that, and then we address that next one, say, all right, this is what we're working on now, what do each of us have to offer, or if someone's busy or gonna be unavailable, or
But don't you need to establish the
Yeah,
ad
that's
hoc
so.
committee to sort of decide what the topics are and or to bring them to the board and say, how do you want to approach this? I don't even know what the topics are anymore.
Well,
I know what you're saying, Josh, but I think if that's the case, you should still have a core
okay.
group that keeps it rolling.
Okay.
And then if you want to be part of that, because they want to bring in their strengths, and be part, it's always, anybody can go, just kind of got to control it, but, if it's more than 3, then we have to.
What are you thinking, Mimi? You've mentioned this before and I forget what, you seem to have an idea.
I don't even remember. I remember talking about it. I thought we were just gonna bring a topic and I'll discuss it. I didn't think we were gonna do a committee. That's how much I remember of the discussion. But I just think we need to keep the ball rolling. And there's those 4 points, which I don't have, they're on my computer, not my phone. So I can't even tell you. One was technology, something, one was marketing. I can't tell you what they are off the top of my head. But I think we were gonna do technology utilization.
Right, relevant course offerings, marketing our district, partnerships.
I think we were gonna do one, we were gonna try to talk about them quarterly, but we were gonna do one a month or something, like do technology utilization and then the next month do the course offerings, and then if we kept them on the rotation, we would get updates. Is that what we were gonna?
Yeah.
Because it'd be nice if we set a goal, if we all agree, to get updates on the implementation of the
What's happening?
Yeah.
so you don't feel we need the committee, the ad hoc committee?
I don't know. I can see.
So whose responsibility would it be? The topic can get put on an agenda, but who's the person making the presentation?
Right. See, that's why I feel like we need to have a committee, because that way it's somewhat organized, structured, where, like, when we have our, I'll just use our meeting, we just have facilities, we come in, we have an agenda, we talk about it, we bring it back to the board and update them. Where I think if you just let it be whatever, it'll be lost again.
True.
Instead of keep it rolling forward. That's just, again, I'm like you, it's just my opinion. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are on it. And again, if it's ad hoc, we can just cancel it when we feel back on track.
Let's do that then.
But if we should start with something. Because right now, I think if we went around the room, we'd all be like, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Well, like with technology utilization, are we doing Schoology,
Yes.
hardcore? Did we decide not to because it was too expensive and people don't have the time? I don't know where that's at. Is that
right.
the highest priority thing that we have?
Well, that's something we're talking
Technology utilization?
about.
Is there something else that's more important?
No,
all
that
that
needs to
sort of
be
stuff.
addressed and where we're at with it. And,
Yep.
Conversation.
I think last week when they talked about strategic planning, they're also tying it in with the world's best workforce. That was a big place that I heard it mentioned.
Right.
Yep.
So.
And so if we're really going to,
I think we need a committee, but that's.
is it a
Everybody's gotta
committee
agree.
with just board? Do you want, what stakeholders do you want involved?
I think that may change because each one of those thoughts had different people involved in it, correct? All those, like the technology one had this different group. I think if you have a core member of the board and then those people different come in, who's ever doing the technology part of it, you know, who's supposed to be working on that, and that would be sitting down with the board members when we're discussing that. And then the next time we're talking about the next piece, then that group would be sitting down with those board people. And the main thing is there'd be the liaison between what's happening and updating us. Because does anybody know what's going on with any of those things right now?
Corinne probably does, but
Yeah,
we don't.
Corinne does, but I'm saying, I'm talking to board. You know,
I know,
Yeah,
but
Corinne
does
knows,
anybody,
but-
she's sitting at the table.
Yeah, Corinne knows, but yeah, it'd be just nice to know what's going on. That was our whole thought process behind it, is keep us up to date. And, you know, maybe we have some input on it. Thoughts. But
And we also talked about the top 10 then, in terms of with the strategic plan, you need to have that to be considered into the top 10.
so,
The top 10.
There's some award or something to go, award that they have.
Oh, the new ESSA award?
Yes.
Okay. It took the place of the old reward.
so maybe what are your thoughts? Think we should try it and see? I mean, again, if it's not gonna be a permanent one, we can.
I think we pick, I mean, we could pick technology first, right? And just
Okay.
in have a committee just talk alone, or there is a committee for technology and we can get them together with some board members.
Well,
And
there are board members on a district
exactly.
technology.
I am on that committee, so, but we could get together and talk and maybe have like the principals there too. I don't know.
They're on the committee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And then say this was our goal, like what's the one big
Where we
thing
at?
we're working on this year, and maybe we don't all agree that it's Schoology. I don't know. Maybe somebody says, well, actually it's this. We're all doing something with STEM. Maybe that's more important than Schoology. I think I've heard both those things mentioned. So
They're doing both, because the STEM is one of the world's best workforce goals for each of the sites. And so it's actually STEAM. There's the
Well,
STEAM focus.
well, there was a speaker a couple years ago, and I've heard Ron say it before multiple times, is, you know, if you have too many goals, if you have more than 3, you have none. So what's our number one goal, right? Because we can only focus on so many things. We already have 4 different sections. So what's the one thing the board is gonna, you know, really get behind?
so your thoughts are come up with a committee to keep it rolling? The subcommittee for the strategic planning?
Sure.
So,
Gary, Michael?
Yeah, what are we doing?
We have like a subcommittee, just,
An ad hoc
I feel like
committee.
we're the federal government here, we're gonna have a,
Not a standing
I
committee.
think it's good, just for the reasoning you said, someone that's gonna report, someone that's gonna keep on task, and if we end up specializing per that need, then we do that.
just have a couple people on it.
And if we can't get, I mean, we obviously can't have every board member there, but if the board has questions, we can have
That's
that group
the
come
whole-
and talk to the board, and, you know, I mean, there can be a liaison, or we could have a big meeting with the whole board too.
Point is to keep it on topic.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly,
The
that's the
legs
main
on it.
focus, is to keep it moving forward,
Yeah.
so,
Okay, just
Okay.
so I know what,
ad hoc.
okay,
committee,
so you want an ad hoc committee.
Correct,
You also want the district tech advisory committee to meet to discuss this with the ad hoc committee?
Well, if we're talking about the tech goal.
Because you wanted the tech goal first.
right.
Well, I don't.
That's good.
It's
that's
the one that I
good
know
one.
of.
Oh,
off the
that's
top of my
fine,
head.
that's exactly.
That gets the
Keep
ball
going, Fred.
rolling. We're-
Keep going.
So if we're
January.
doing the tech goal first,
Right,
then we're going to have the district tech advisory committee convene
mm-hmm,
with the ad hoc committee, whichever members are on that,
mm-hmm,
and discuss what that strategic plan is around technology.
right,
And for that district tech advisory committee, it has a lot of online teachers. Were you looking just, did you want the online focus? Were you just thinking of the, on-site at first? Did you want it?
I would say to start with the on-site, that would be my thoughts, just,
Who else is on the
Michael,
tech
you look like
committee?
you got a thought there.
It's
Well,
Michael
I
Lee.
like to slow
and Jean.
things down.
Okay, so those three.
We're all on the technology committee?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just curious about board activity on that.
So
I would
I'm
say to
thinking
separate the
that we
online
need to
and local,
establish
because
an
there's
ad hoc
a little different.
committee
They're
for
really
the
different.
strategic plan. And the ad hoc committee, in my opinion, ought to be at least one board member and the superintendent minimally. Maybe 2 board members and the superintendent, just to say, what are our focus areas? And if it's district technology, now that group is gonna communicate with the district technology committee to ask some questions about what's going on. So I don't think it needs to be the whole district
No.
tech committee. If done that way, it's like, we don't know what questions we have, we're just trying to get some information on where we're at. And then bring that to the board, and the board may have questions, and then the subcommittee, the ad hoc committee can continue to follow the technology. That's complicated, but
So you wanna accomplish step 1 here before we jump in?
I think we need an oversight group.
Okay.
Either the whole board is the oversight group, and we just name separate ad hoc committees for each of the 4 goals, which is a possibility, which is what we're kind of talking about by just convening the technology group. Or we have an ad hoc committee that then,
I would say just have an ad hoc committee over it all, just
a small group that's
small group,
just, that
correct,
is,
exactly.
When would that fall on the agenda, then, how we nominate and appoint that committee? That could be
that's
next
his,
meeting?
Yeah.
that's his prerogative. If we agree to form the ad hoc
If we agree
committee,
to form,
the chair
we
gets
just,
to appoint.
yeah.
Usually.
It's
That's who
just,
else to assign,
we
yeah.
agreed to do that back in November,
Right.
and then we,
We just never had it on the
Right,
list for the
Right.
committees, so. So we're gonna add it as an ad hoc committee.
okay,
And then, like Michaeline was just saying, we'll have a couple people on it, you and maybe one other board member. And then we'll start with technology and get with those, see where they're at. Cause I'm sure they're, what's happening, what direction they taking, what are they working on, what's their top priority, that type of thing. And then that small group can come back and let us know of what's going on. Just keep us up to date.
did you want to name?
Is there anybody who wants to volunteer for that?
Well, I think there should be more than one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we should, I would like to be a part of that,
Okay.
Okay,
but I would be a weakness
And then
by
you're gonna be on
myself.
there. I'll be on there. Nobody else wants to join unless you wanna be on it, Garrett.
pretty soon we're gonna have the whole board on it, because
Maybe
we're
you
all
wanna be on it.
interested in
Well,
it.
we are.
We are.
How does it work then? If, thank you.
Well, no, listen.
If we have 3 people on that and then 3
Well, see, that's
people
why
on the-
maybe we
Yeah.
should just have separate ad hoc committees for each of our focus areas. That's the other way to do it.
Yeah.
That's maybe how it would play
Yeah, but then-
out.
Yeah.
are you getting this down?
I am so confused.
So if we have
Just
a
wait for the
committee for
recap.
each
It'll
one of
make
those
sense
sub, but
eventually.
most of us are, how many board members do we have on all of these?
Well, so technology utilization would be Mimi, Jean, and myself.
Okay, so that could be the committee for the,
So the ad hoc for tech,
could be that. Okay, then what's the next committee? The next group?
Relevant course offerings.
Okay, do we have any board members on that?
that would be
And
the
one
district
current.
advisory committee.
Okay,
That-
that's Mimi and Jean.
Okay, so then that would be that group.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one?
Marketing our district. I thought we discussed that as the online
We
schools
did,
committee.
but then we never really.
Okay.
I don't know if that really fits there. There's a huge component of marketing for the
Mhm.
online,
Right,
but
but we're not really,
the online schools committee doesn't talk about marketing the on-site
the
school.
on-site school, which is, cause the
And
online
that's-
school is kind of,
I think that one should be a separate, and I know Josh was interested in that too. I think
Yeah.
it should be a
Yeah.
separate and maybe not with the online. I think we did it because you were on the online maybe, and we were like, well,
Yeah.
we'll just
Yeah.
do it there, but.
Well, that was
so then
mentioned.
why don't we have that, we'll have Josh on that, and then is there anybody else who wants to be on the
Ad
marketing
hoc,
one?
and that's marketing.
Mhm. I can be on there, with like, maybe those.
I like marketing too.
Okay, so them two.
Good.
Josh and Mimi?
Yep, then
Okay.
the next is, what's the last?
Partnerships with colleges, businesses, and schools.
We don't have a group that's doing that one.
Do we have anybody involved in that one?
Yeah.
Other than you?
Well, if somebody else would like to,
I can help out.
because we're trying to work with the,
Oh, that's right.
Houston
the
County, Courtney
thing.
Berge, and with Sarah Wexler-Mann, and.
You wanna be on that one? You're a community guy.
I did go to the PSEO session
So I
up there
put Gene
and the VOTEC.
Jean and,
me.
Well-
I guess let's do what? Someone
Yeah,
else?
well, I'd be interested if you're not.
Oh, if you wanna be on it, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I'm not, so partnerships with colleges is of interest to me, of mine.
Yeah.
So, but.
No, that's,
no, cause that's,
no, that, I like
One
that.
of
I
the
mean, I'm
things
not gonna bring anything to the table, so.
and we're really
Yes,
looking
you
at,
are.
You can still be on it. There can be
Partnerships
three
with
of you.
businesses and
Yeah.
Okay.
other community.
and so
Okay.
Tom
Yeah.
as well. And I'm getting this down so we
So it'd be
can
then three.
double check each other.
And we're
Right, Mike?
recording, and there is volume.
Right.
Okay,
What?
Three,
Three.
got it then, Corinne?
yep,
So that's what they are.
So
if
the
you're ready.
tech group is going to meet, and it's gonna be Jean and Michaeline and I
Correct.
representing the board.
Right.
And we're gonna kind of work through stuff with that group
See
and
where
bring it
they're at.
back to the board
Right.
and then
Yes.
see,
Just like we do
see
with
what
the
we can come back with
Yeah.
and
okay, so you
That's more
want tech to meet
straightforward.
first?
Yeah.
Which one do you want to tackle second? May I ask if we could please tackle curriculum second so we could adhere
Okay,
to
that's
this
fine.
calendar as far as the world's best workforce
fine.
and that?
Put it down for number 2.
Okay. Then marketing and partnerships, which one do you feel should be the third target?
Well, I mean, marketing, we're coming up on, and I mean, I know it's after the first of the year, we're coming up on the new year, we should probably discuss next year's marketing strategy. And partnerships, we should do that all at the same time, because we're gonna have to try to schedule.
Let's just do them 1, 2, 3, 4, the
Yeah.
way they're listed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it that
Technology,
way.
course, curriculum,
Yeah.
marketing, and then partnerships.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
anything else on that, okay, we're good? Clear as mud.
Well, I have much more clarity now than I did before the conversation started, so thank you.
That's what conversations
committee,
are
just ad
useful
hoc.
for.
Yeah. Okay. That it then, let's move along. Whole business, items for discussion and approval.
So it's, the first is the resolution,
Resolution,
and that's just,
it's the same as always.
yep,
You presented that last meeting.
Mhm.
Motion to approve.
Second.
okay. A motion and second discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Policies for second reading?
have you had a chance to read through these?
I did read
Okay.
them. There was, like you said, the only change was in definitions of
Sexual
Sex trafficking.
and so forth.
And that's also something that they're very worried about, especially with the Super Bowl coming to Minneapolis and our proximity to Rochester. Rochester is getting to be, it's a pipeline area.
Lacrosse, we were talking about last time in the news too.
Right, so we just need to make sure that,
I think it's something we should make sure our children are aware of.
right,
You know, our students, because if they see, and that was one of the discussions last night, if you see something that seems out of place, ask, talk about it, let people know. Because according to my nephew, who's worked cop-ish up in Rochester, was saying, again, they would have, you know, somebody else doing the baiting, and then once they get them out the building, and it may be over a period of time, it's not gonna happen right away, then they're gone.
yeah, and so it's very timely that we're redoing the policy now, and getting that in.
So, okay, anyway. So, do we have a motion to approve policy 410, 413, 414, and 415?
I so moved that we approve policies.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mike Lee. Further discussion?
Just the principals are aware of the updated and the counselors, and everybody appropriate is aware of the
Yes, yep.
Okay. So now, a new item on there, the signs for the buildings.
And the pictures are,
There.
okay, what we have here is starting with the awning. This would be over the front entrance. The white is all illuminated, so at night, the white, everything that's white here would actually kind of reflect and glow, and so we'd actually have the hurricane symbol.
So there are lights behind the letters, a
The-
panel of lights.
The LED light that's there right now is so the wiring is there, so we don't have to pay for new wiring. It's just a different bank of LED lights that will be installed there to make sure that the entire sign is illuminated. And so with this is going to be end up with installation. It comes about 3 feet out from the building. So
Is that from the brick?
from the brick. And so it does provide some extra coverage over the sidewalk for rain and snow. And it also, with 3 feet out from down at the teardrop area, it will be far enough out that it will be clearly visible as a main entrance. So people can finally see, oh yeah, that's something that looks like a main entrance.
And does it catch snow or accumulate
Nope,
snow?
not on top, it's rounded.
It's
Okay.
it's a
So it's
dome
be
top.
aluminum material, round, be framed in.
And then underneath, it's the egg crate. So the light will come through it, but you're not gonna be looking up and looking at lights. Okay, so that's 3,300. The Houston Elementary sign, there's going to be a few tweaks on this, but this is with the Art Deco print. And what he's going to do is remove the word school, so it'll just say Houston Elementary, so the elementary can be larger. That will probably mean that the Houston will have to shrink because we'll be making it shorter. So we'll bring that in on the sides, and then he can do some Art Deco artwork on the sides of the Houston. And then the elementary's larger because Mr. Bartz really wanted the elementary to stand out more. He said everybody knows they're in Houston. They don't know they're at the elementary school. And so the elementary will go the entire width of the sign, and then Houston will be above it. So that will be the tweak there. This is done on a silver with the black, and it really matches the Art Deco building.
Will it be lit as well or no?
No, that one is not.
And that font is because it's an Art Deco font, or what?
Yes, that it
Okay.
matches. If we had this, if you looked at the Houston letters that are on the side of the building, it matches that stylistically.
Okay. Because that was the only thing, I like the colors, the different colors on the different buildings, but I was just wondering about a more
consistent
uniform, consistent font.
I really like the font. I think it looks
I
really
do
cool.
like it, but you know.
It's just different enough, but it's pretty cool.
And
And the next,
it's similar enough that,
It's black.
yeah, it's still the block. It's not the way out Art Deco. So each one has, so let's see, what's this? So here's Houston preschool, and right now, this is shown with the gold, with burgundy, and Rick asked that be brown instead of burgundy, because he just thought the brown would match the roof better than the burgundy. And then they're also making a matching gold sign here with the brown background that says main entrance, right over the door. And,
Is that one gonna have, okay, so that one's, so Houston is still gonna be big, it's not.
Houston's gonna be big, but there's early childhood center,
You know,
there, you couldn't take any of those words out. And so Rick was fine with that. And then the last thing is home in the hurricanes and everybody like that. What I liked was the fact that adding all of this up,
what was about the teardrop sign you didn't show?
oh, did I
It's on the
not?
bottom, you have it flipped over down there.
Oh, that's why. And then this is at the front of the teardrop, so the directional sign, and it's large enough for people to see it. And so you do, and it doesn't block the view of any windows. That's what I liked. And it is right where people come in. So in adding all of these signs up, we have a total cost of $6,730. And that includes awning installation. It doesn't include installation of the other signs, but that it does include the installation of brackets. But we've got people here that can install. But the nice thing, I think when we looked at that first sign from La Crosse sign, I think it was $7,600 just for the big sign in the front yard, and that was just one sign. So now we're getting all of them for about $1,000 less.
Does that include that little one too in the preschool?
Yep.
Mhm.
Again, when
Yep.
we talked about it at the facility meeting, we figured maybe an extra $500.
Yep.
For attachment or whatever odds and ends,
Odds and
because
ends.
he was talking about the lights aren't included in there, cause he's not a light guy, so he doesn't know how much, so when we, you figure about another 500, you're right around that $7,200 maybe, which is right what we kind of budgeted.
So if we approve it tonight,
If we approve it tonight, he'll get started on them. The awning said 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
To get that built in itself. It'd be nice to try to get it accomplished in a springtime project and get it rolling.
I think they all look great. I'm really happy with what we ended up with.
So,
And the kids are really happy, because we had him redo the signs in brown, so we could see what then the kids saw those and said, please, can we, the brown doesn't look good. So. And the kids were happy with how this is morphed, and they were
part of it.
And they were, well, not only part of it, but they liked the direction it went.
So I'll make a motion to approve the signs.
We have a motion, or a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Josh. Discussion.
I'm glad the students have been brought, in on the conversation or informed of where we're at. And, I think for a while it sounded like they were feeling frustrated. Some of them have graduated and moved on. I think when this is done, we need to make sure we reach out and recognize and thank them for the role they played in it.
Well, one was talking about getting pictures taken, graduation pictures of them.
Yeah, but some of them have already graduated.
Yeah,
Right.
but at the same time, you're right, Michael, it may be something we can get a hold of the ones that were involved and get a picture and put in the banner, or something, just to recognize them.
So
they
I mean,
know.
thanks from us for their part of it.
Were they pretty well the honor roll students?
They were
The
Was it
honor
honor
society
society?
students,
but
they've been.
So, good kids.
It's been a long project, but it's been worth it.
Oh, and we've gotten to know some of the honor society kids this way too, so it's.
Trent would consider being a board representative too.
Would he?
I asked him, I said, you do a good job, you should think about that. Well, maybe I should.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we had some discussion, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
New business, items for discussion, we don't really have any announcements, important events. We have the breakfast coming up in February.
And I did get did all of you get that sent to you? as far as, okay. Registration, now that you see it, how many of you are saying, yes, I'm in?
I have Mike, Tom, and Ron down.
Yeah.
Mike, can you still?
Yeah, it's a Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, are you
Yeah.
still in? Okay.
I'm still in, yeah. I'm still
Gina
in.
said he did.
I gotta be down in Iowa. Yeah.
You are spending too much time with Ron. Okay.
Okay, so. Anything else on that, Karen?
And would you like me to register you?
Can we do it ourselves? Usually we have to register through the office.
Okay.
Cause I have to get the PO and all that
Okay.
stuff, so.
Okay,
We'll do
we'll register you.
Okay. So, meeting and committee updates, we talked about our facility meeting. Do you have anything else you wanna bring up on that?
Yeah, I can give you an update on the garage project. Corinne's been working on trying to get quotes, but no luck yet on that. But you mentioned what?
Morton
Okay.
Morton said that they would get a quote to me, but they are really swamped.
Right. Okay, so it's Morton's. And you mentioned a 26 by 60 being the size.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a work in progress, and still planning for spring construction.
Mm-hmm. We got the go-ahead from the measurements from City Hall, so we can put in the 26 by 60 with the 30-foot setback required by the city without having to get a variance. It's right within the flood zone, so.
So once we get all the finances and costs, we'll get with, make sure everything's good to go.
Where is that garage going again?
Over here.
In the grassy
Staff-
area
staff
on
parking.
Elm.
Grassy knoll over there, by the swamp,
Well, it's actually the
bonding area.
antithesis of a knoll. It's the grassy dip, which is why we need about 1.5 feet of fill.
And when we get the drawings, it'll be divided out with who gets what space too. I don't want anybody to get upset that they think they're getting storage space and they're not.
Oh, yeah.
So is this,
I'd like to have
And
those
that's why I'm
discussions up
going
front.
with Morton, because
That
they
is
actually do the storage units, so it's defined spaces within, it's not just an open garage.
so they're also constructing it too then? Okay.
Is this gonna be heated? Not heated?
No.
No,
Not heated.
no, not
We
heated.
have one heated.
We have a heated one
Yeah.
already.
We don't need to.
But do we have stuff in the heated that doesn't really need to be in there?
Right,
Yeah.
And
so
that's
that's-
gonna get moved over
Right.
here?
Yep,
Exactly, you're right on it.
and then so that if we have more stuff that needs to be heated, it can go in the heated one, and then we had, right now it's all there because we have no other
All the
space.
place
The heated one is by the elementary.
Mhm. But that was beastly expensive.
Okay, anything else?
Yep, next thing was a discussion on replacing a Winona Controls Nexus server. Can you want to explain that one?
Well, I got the quote from, Andy handed it to me and said that the current thing that they're using is Java-based and not web-based, and that's why they can't support it anymore, and that's why they're having issues trying to log in and service things remotely in the high school HVAC system. And so they said that we need to get the new server, and it's $7,500. And so the facility committee asked me to ask them questions as far as ask them questions of Dependable Solutions as far as if they know of this type of server, and is this the accurate price for that server, and then also talking to Winona Controls as far as, okay, if we're buying a server, is it getting installed at Winona Controls? Is it getting installed here in the building somewhere? If it's installed in the building, how are you maintaining it? Are we maintaining it with our IT people? So there's all of those questions that I do not have the answers to, and I was just told this is something they had to get, because the old one isn't supported. And I felt kind of over a barrel. And our system is not that old, but it is all Java-based, I know that.
So when
Well, in Java, it's just the software. Can't they just replace that?
And the web is run on JavaScript.
It
lot of it.
needs to be replaced.
Okay.
There are other businesses that have, that I'm aware of. I work with Winona Controls where they've had to
Change them all.
update the.
I don't think we have a choice to replace it, we're just making sure that
There might be
we're-
a cheaper.
they estimate how long that would hold
but,
as far as,
and the maintenance question's a good question, because you need to know.
Mhm.
And would deferred maintenance pay for that? Or long-term facility maintenance?
Yes.
So do we have to budget that for next year then and wait till then to do it?
No,
we can't wait.
We can't.
It
We
has to be
can't wait.
done.
And we do, if you remember, there was the extra, since it's part of the HVAC system, we could use that, part of that 108.
We have
That we have
$109,000
left over.
left in that one pot from left over from the building work
Construction.
that we have sitting there. We could utilize
Can we
that.
use that for anything or does it have to be
No.
associated?
It has to be associated with the
Right.
buildings, and we have to use that within 2 years.
Just to be a good way of utilizing it. But we don't wanna
But we don't
spend
wanna
that much, we
waste
don't
it.
need to,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, the other thing we talked about was a screech owl nesting box being placed in a tree on the edge of the slough back here by Brian Lee
During All Fest week.
during All Fest.
It's like a ceremonial hanging of the.
Just to
Well,
show
it's a-
people.
It's a training, because
Yeah,
they
Got it.
build the screech owl boxes during All Fest, and
And
they
they're
go
not supposed to
home.
be leaning against your shed like ours are?
Well, that's what Carla talked about. She said, we're building these and no one knows how to put them up, how to put them up safely, where to put them up. So she said, Brian, during that, at the end of that class on building the box, we'll take everybody out to the back, the tree, and show you how to safely install a screech owl box. But she said she wanted permission before she put a ladder up next to a tree. And for the All Fest, they do have their own liability insurance, so we would just make sure that the grounds are covered on that as well, and then
Do we get to keep it?
Oh yeah, it'll stay out here, and then we can use.
Screech owl in?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Big
cool.
sign, welcome.
And
Welcome.
Screech owls only.
oh, hold on a second. Wood ducks might go in too. So
And then there was a little bit of discussion about doing the same thing over by the elementary school, maybe.
The screech owl box.
Yeah. But those might be city trees, so there might be additional
So
sign-offs required.
if Carla feels the best tree is actually a city tree, she would have to get approval from the city for that.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions? Okay. So, anything else, Corinne? From you?
Unless people want an update from MSBA.
Can I do that tonight, or you wanna wait till next?
I personally want to wait because I forgot my notes.
Okay.
Some of us could go tonight, then we all don't have to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You gotta go, Mike, you can go. I got my stuff here, so.
Why don't you go first? Tom?
Oh, I see how it is. Okay, fine. Get it.
I don't know, Jean, are you ready?
So,
Sure.
hey, what I went to see, obviously we all went to the,
And then Ron and you can.
the speaker, which I thought was good, you know, went pretty well. The first workshop that I went to was Career and College Ready Pathways for All Students. And they had a school there, Burnsville High School. They had a few schools, Egan's, and of course they're a little different. They went out and got some monies. I think they got a referendum for 65 million, then they got another technology referendum for 25 million, so that makes a little bit of difference in your life. You know, I told them if we went for $100 million in our community, we'd be all hanging in front of the building. Anyway, so it was kind of, it was, they talked about this STEAM, STEA3M, art, and advanced learning, and so it was kind of interesting the way they were doing it. They do a lot with community stuff that we're talking about, community activities, working with local businesses. They would have people come in for different, like construction or manufacturing. They could either go downtown and work like a bank. Let's use our bank in town. They had a bank business class as part of this program that they were putting on. And they try to do everything in the school. Instead of having people farmed out to go to someplace, they would just bring people in. So they would have like a banker come to the school and go over what's involved in being part of a bank, all the business aspects of the bank. And it was very interesting. And some of these kids that were thinking about going into careers, it kind of gave them an idea of what's going on. But the technology, like I said, they had $25 million. It was kind of funny when they said they had $25 million and they were bragging about how their kids, I think they had 4th grade kids now were able to get a Chromebook. And they're hoping within the next few years they'll get it down to like the kindergarten kids, which I think I mentioned to Corinne, and I said, when do our kids get a Chromebook here? Which I'm thinking $25 million, you'd think you'd be able to get everybody one, but that's not the case in every school, I guess. So I feel like we're doing good things with what we have. That was one of them, which again, it was kind of a fun thing. Then the next one that I went to, Mimi and I both went to this one, was Straight Talk from students. And I always feel those are interesting. It's kind of unique to hear what kids have to say because, like what was it, Bill Cosby said, kids say the darndest things. When they tell you what they're at. If you went, some kids, people ask them, well, what do you want? What would you like to see? And a lot of them would like to, one kid said he wishes he knew more about trade schools. They weren't discussing trade schools at their school. Now these kids are all going to colleges, but at the same time they're saying, we never hear about it. Our counselors don't talk about it. It's all about college and it's about this and that, but not what does it take to get into a trade school. And so that was kind of a neat discussion. They were also talking about phones in school. Remember they had that conversation, right? Maybe we were talking about Snapchat or tweeting and using their watches for cheating and that type of thing. But the main focus they were talking about is how these kids are bullying each other on their cell phones. And one of the girls said that her niece was in like 4th grade who had an iPhone, and she saw some inappropriate pictures that were being sent from another 4th grade kid to her with her niece. So, one of the questions was, how do you stop that? And the kids were saying, well, I think what's happening is the parents they're not being communicated on the rights and the wrongs on how to use these equipment. They have this equipment, they're tech dependent, but they don't really understand what they should and shouldn't do with it. And one of the conversations were that kids don't know that whatever they Snapchat to people, I think is one of the things that they use now. I'm not into all that stuff. That's out there forever. People say, well, it only lasts a couple seconds on your phone, then it's gone. And they're like, not necessarily. That's stuff that someone could access. So these kids that are sending inappropriate information or photos to each other, that's out there. And it seemed to me like they knew it was a problem, but at the same time, nobody's communicating to them that they shouldn't be doing it. That's kind of what
they said they're taught on, from a young age, don't take candy from strangers, things like that, what's appropriate touch and not appropriate. But those seniors had never had somebody sit down and say, this is what's appropriate on a phone and not appropriate on a phone.
Yeah.
If you don't know this person, or if you get a second friend request or whatever, just that they felt like we weren't doing a very good job as educators, educating them on that.
Right, and in fact, there was one person in the audience that had a teacher that just got arrested because that teacher had taken a photo of a kid like in a 6th grade class, and use that as his photo in his portfolio, and addressing other kids in that class, and they said, oh, look, it's Johnny or whatever, you know, they're a friend. So they friended this person, and next thing you know, it led to
He should be removed.
abuse
They're in
and
jail.
oh yeah, he's in jail, you know, sexual assault and all this other stuff, and I was just like, you're kidding me. And this went on in the school, and that's why they're saying that this is, it's, you know, these kids need to know. And again, when we're listening to these kids asking us that they need to be educated on this, you know, I think we mentioned it after the fact. I mean, what are we doing to make sure that that's not being done? And when you see these kids in the hallway Snapchatting each other, what do we know what they're doing and what they're not doing? In classrooms, do they have their phones? I know, Michaeline, you had mentioned that the kids are using not only their phones, but their watches now for cheating in school. You know, how aware are we, you know, of what's going on around us? Sometimes I think we just let it go instead of monitoring it. So it was kind of interesting on the few subjects that they talked about. You may go into more when she talks next time. The next thing I went into the next day, well, that afternoon we talked to Tom about money, finances. Yeah.
Tom Belcher.
Yeah, and can go over that stuff. There is no money. How school counselors can benefit your district. Again, it was funny that when we talked to the students, they're telling us that counselors aren't doing that much for them. They're not helping them. There was some concerns on filling out applications for colleges, not knowing what needs to be filled out, when it needs to be filled out. This other on the counselors and how they can benefit the district. They also, on this part of it, they were talking about how the average, Minnesota is 48th in the states as far as counselors to pupil units. Meaning the average should be about like 260 kids or something like that for every counselor. In Minnesota, it's like 760 to every counselor.
It's because
So there's not enough
elementary's
counselors to do
added
their
into
job. Now I'm assuming because we have a smaller school, in our brick and mortar school, we should be fine. Which I'm hoping that we're doing a lot for these kids, because to me that's an important part of their job.
With the one kid in that student session, she mentioned that she was so far behind because she didn't even really know who her counselor was. She never really talked to them, and she didn't have, she said, an outside counselor. So I think people pay for their kids to have they call them college counselors.
Also, yeah, you're right.
Paid college counselors to help them get into the schools that
Right.
they want. So that's kind of what's being done in cities, which I've never heard of before.
No, yeah, and some of the parents, yeah, you're right, that are paying them. And I'm trying to think of what that guy said. Because Wyzetta School, because these kids are so inundated on getting applications to colleges, Wyzetta High School said no assignments during Christmas break. Period. You cannot give your kids any assignments during Christmas break time because these kids have to get their applications filled out. They were that far behind in Wyzetta. And the teachers weren't happy about it, but he said that's what he laid down the law. He was a superintendent of Wyzetta or something. But, so you can see that counselors, and some of these were counselors that were talking. Some of the things they said are kind of ridiculous, is that schools have counselors monitor tests. I don't know if you guys knew this, I didn't till this. Your counselors, mandatory, have to have a master's degree to be a counselor in the state of Minnesota. So they're one of the highest paid people that work in the school. But yet we use them for monitoring the lunchroom, monitoring when they stay after school, monitoring the library, monitoring tests. And these counselors are saying, why do you have us, one of the most expensive people in your building, doing trivial stuff when you should be having us doing other things? And some of the other problems we're having with schools, and I got a copy of it, and Corinne said that we're probably doing it, evaluation tools for counselors. There's a separate evaluation tool that counselors are supposed to be evaluated with, but yet he said 80% of the schools use the same evaluation paperwork that they use for a regular teacher, because that's how they perceive them. They're not really.
The TD&E through Charlotte Danielson, which is the observation evaluation model. there are separate rubrics just for counselors.
And we have 2 in our brick and mortar.
In the brick and mortar, well, we
One in
have
elementary,
one,
one in high
In
school.
the
we have
elementary.
1.47. Mary
So we're
Gavitt
fortunate
is
considering the amount of
0.47,
kids that we have.
and
Oh, okay.
Crystal is 1.
But again, as a parent and as a school board member, I just want to ensure that our counselors are doing everything they possibly can to help our kids. And like I said, when we talk to these kids, and I'm not saying Houston, but when you talk to these, every one of the kids had basically a horror story on their counselors not helping them. And I'm just hoping that that's not happening here. Because it just seemed, you go from one and then you hear from the counselors that they're basically being utilized to do other things and not what they should be doing. And there's not enough of them to go around, so.
And last year, it was the same thing the kids talked about.
Yeah.
That they needed a counselor. There should be 2 different counselors. There should be the counselor that helps with college, and then there should be the one that talks to the kids that need somebody to talk to.
Yeah, because they were talking the hours, even these counselors were saying the hours they spend on kids for home issues. They have, one counselor mentioned how, this young person came in and basically was being abused at home every day. And he goes, that's the way you start off your day in a school sometimes, in certain schools. And, that, you can't walk away from that.
They're also mandatory reporting.
Yeah, I know, and what I'm saying, there's things that you have to do at that point in time. But that's what they should be doing, that's their responsibilities, to ensure that these kids can have a place to go, that they feel is safe, someone they can talk to, not only for that, emotional issues, but also for college prep issues, and school, making sure they're on track, and so, anyway.
I know for Ms. Moda here now, one thing she should be doing is working on scholarships, getting the seniors to apply for scholarships. And like, I was at My Energy, they're giving away 40 $500 scholarships for 20,000. So those will be coming in. And our Lions, when we give ours, we get like maybe 6, 8 applicants only. And it's hard to get students to fill those things out. Even though she works on it.
She does, but the thing is, the kids have found that if the scholarship goes to the college instantly, so if the entity bequeathing the scholarship gives it to the college, the kids also know, because they've got friends who graduated last year and the year before, that money automatically gets deducted from their financial aid. And so they know that, okay, I did all this work to get this scholarship and it got me absolutely 0 because this money just took the place of that money.
But each school is different.
Yep.
Some let you keep half, some let you keep up to a certain level. But if you don't know what school you're going to, it's hard to
Right.
apply and know what's going to happen.
But I mean, they go to the students more or less.
Anyway, so that was mine. Colleen, you?
I don't know, Jean, do you wanna
Jean,
go? I don't know, how much do we wanna do tonight? We have to.
My
Yeah,
battery's
okay.
dying,
Yeah.
so you could cut it off.
Okay.
I can do a couple. I went to the Minnesota State High School League one. Some of the big issues there, one was they were transfer eligibility. And we don't have too much, I don't think, in terms of students transferring in and out, and are they eligible when they sit out for a year and everything else.
Online, we have a lot.
Yeah, online we have a lot. One thing on that is you can have an 8th grader transfer into the school, they're immediately eligible, because the eligibility rule in terms of having 1 year out doesn't take effect until 9th grade. And some of the smaller schools have 8th graders playing on their varsity team, so they're looking at that. Another issue that they brought up was having a shot timing on basketball. And they said for smaller schools and everything, no, because you have to have a clock on each end of the ones. You have to have somebody there running the clock and everything else. You got the big added expense to the school. So they said, no, you don't want that. The other one was the stress in terms of inappropriate touch, sexuality, on that. And he mentioned even at the state level, he says somebody was coming in and somebody grabbed one person there and gave him a big hug. And he says, I thought it was a bigger squeeze than it should have been. And he says, we didn't even want to get in trouble on that. So he says, you got to stress that all the time on that. No slapping on the bottoms or anything like this. So I mean, that was really issue. I did go to a roundtable on online school for school board members, and that was basically in terms of how you distribute material and being able to get your minutes online and everything. And we're doing everything that they said that we're right up on top of that, or higher than anybody else within that. I'd have to say that we're getting that information, getting your policies, everything else online, knowing where to find it. So we have all that. I went to a legal issue put on by there's a lawyer up there, and he was talking about some things. Now he mentioned that having that phone or something, but you got to be careful in terms of taking that phone away. You have to have just cause. You just can't take it away on that. And there's been many different lawsuits, so he had a lot of scenarios, and that was very interesting on that. And you got to be very careful on that. For what they do on that for suspending a student for something on that. Everything else, you just can't do it unless you better have a good cause behind it. So, he had some very good cases on that. Another one I went to was on the PSL school, vocational school options, and online school courses within there where the universities come into the school, teach you online your AP classes and everything else. So covered a lot of those things that's available out there. I know we have some PSEO vocational schools and everybody in here, so that took in that. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 of the sessions I guess I went to, other than the business ones. Then I did phase 1 and phase 2 of the trainings. And those were, second day was really a drain. And that was all the financing.
Second day was all financing.
And financing. So day 1 was better, the 4 hours, but you get that second day with the financing and everything, that got into it pretty good. So.
Okay.
I'm gonna go, if I keep it quick.
Yeah, they might as well. You can keep it quick.
Or Corinne, do you want to report out, or are you gonna?
No, then I can wait until next time.
Okay, so basically for you guys, the conference title was Student Achievement, Passion, Perseverance, and Possibility, and I looked at that and I thought, oh yeah, rah rah. I mean, I'm sorry, I've sort of felt like it was a great title that I just have, I'm just like, here we go. But the opening and closing speakers both talked about passion, perseverance, and possibility, and the power of what education can be for individuals and families and communities. And it was surprisingly informative and inspirational. I think we all agreed that the speakers conveyed important messages. I went to some roundtables. I went to Jean, you were in the room. I was in the room with you on that PSEO thing. You were on the other side. I didn't see it until later, but I forwarded that information to Corinne on some of the legislation. Some of it that was brought up was that there may be some things that board action will be required for schools considering various ways of delivering PSEO or concurrent enrollment, which is college in the schools, and e-learning days, which I think is a topic that is within conversation, and there's board action, board knowledge and understanding of those processes is going to be important if we're asked to act on that. So that was good information. I'm sure Corinne's up on it, but I think as board members, we need to be aware of being informed on that. The other one I went to board and superintendent relations, the things that trip us up. It was not, I wasn't sure about most of it, but one of the presenters, maybe this was from a different one, communicating from the inside out, but it was on how to communicate and having a protocol. And sometimes I think our way of communicating is unclear to me, and I think that sometimes leads to confusion, unintended confusion. So, you know, when the superintendent was talking there, said that he asks his board if there's a question, that he send the question to the superintendent, copy the chair, and then when he replies, the question and the reply goes to everyone. And he also said if a board member wants to contact a principal or somebody in the district, that he asks for the superintendent to be copied on that communication if it's appropriate. And I think sometimes I still am confused. When do we go direct? When do we copy you on it? Because you don't need your inbox having other stuff in it. On the other hand, sometimes there are communications that are happening between a board member and superintendent that the rest of the board is unaware of. So I would hope we could have a conversation about just maybe documenting what's the recommended or the preferred sort of procedure for communicating between board and superintendent, both you to us and us to you and to other individuals in the district, just to create something. Maybe it's fine, maybe I'm the only one, but I think sometimes that's what trips us up, is that communication's happening, that somebody's feeling left out, or, you know, it's just a communication thing.
Then you always gotta watch the one in terms of open meeting.
Oh yeah, no, they talked about that too. Yeah. It's like the superintendent can reply and copy all, but then you can't be emailing one another.
Right.
Information is one thing. The information you're gonna be acting on is another thing. So that gets a little dicey. I get that. I mean, I understand that. So maybe that's why we sometimes don't copy whole boards. The communication from inside and outside the school district, these were board members that visit schools. They have a liaison program, and they have a big district, but they have 7 board members, and each board member has like 3 buildings that they are responsible for physically visiting. I think most of us visit our buildings, elementary and high school, but when we do visit a building, I think we should report it out, not so much for the sake of us, but for the sake of the community. And so to end my little presentation, I would like to thank Deb Botcher and Mr. Bartz for the invitation for me to participate as a judge in the spelling bee that was held just this Wednesday. It was amazing. Spelling is alive and well, and I'm so happy to know that. The kids were so, they had such great presence, and they showed great poise. They stood up there, they had an audience out there. The kids in the audience sat there respectfully for an hour and a half or a little bit longer and listened politely to everything. It was very cool what our kids, how they presented themselves.
There were some, when the word was read, if you could tell right away if the audience thought it was a tough word, because there was a
yeah, or you'd look out there and you'd see parents going,
yeah.
You'd see them freeze, and then when they got it spelled right, they'd go, how do they know that? That was cute. That was very nice. So anyway, I think those kind of things, when we are in the buildings, Mimi, you're in the buildings, whenever we get in the buildings and interact with kids or with teachers, we should share that. You bring the principals in and you report things, but for the sake of the community to hear that the board members are sharing that as well, I think was a valuable message. So that's what I have.
Okay, good job. So, your motion going to close?
Okay.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll come back here to it, or we'll just adjourn in there.
Yeah.
You got all that in?